We are Michael Wood, a Ph.D. in police management and former sergeant with the Baltimore Police Department, and Ty Tate, a regular person like most of you, trying to make sense of the world we all live in. A world where what you don't know can hurt you. This is Wood and T on the POV. Alright, where are we? Okay. Here we go. Alright, so it's pretty common for parents of non-white children to have what is generally known as the talk about how to manage interactions with police. What is your advice for those parents?
I think you have to have that talk. And from your perspective, what is the motivation for that talk? I mean, so I've had that talk. I'm not legally white, but I'm pretty close to it. And I kind of have this expectation as somebody who has been against state violence for a long time, that I would be kind of confused about why everybody wasn't having a similar talk with the police. I don't know whether it has to do with the time I grew up, but I feel like barely growing up in the pre-technology age, I feel like everybody before then kind of sees things differently, especially white middle class and upper class people. I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard, and the difference between the Dukes of Hazzard and I can't think of one off the top of my head, but some black gang show, The Wire or something. They both view the police in the exact same mold. I mean, the police are the thing that's trying to take you off the street. They're trying to take your liberty, and everyone should be against them. I feel like it's rather new that there's been some kind of division. What do you think? Well, let me just say, this is the country that literally did this about Britain. This is why I get upset even about the common Trump stuff. When they're like, isn't it crazy that people stormed the Capitol? I'm like, in America? No!
Yeah. I don't think that it's new. I don't think it's new. I do think it's more prevalent in recent times.
The need or the belief that there's a need?
The belief that there's a need.
Yeah, that's what concerns me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's common for all kinds of parents to have these kind of things. These kind of talks about what to do with the police are common in driver's education courses. And so I feel like there's this long history of us having these kind of conversations. And then I go back to when I was a cop, and I would walk into, say I walk into a 7-Eleven or something like that. And there's a mother in there with their 3-year-old kid who the first thing they say is, oh, look out, I'm going to tell the police on you. They're going to lock you up if you keep talking to me like that. And it would always irritate the crap out of me. Like, bro, do not make me a demon because you are the one not parenting your child properly. I'm not the one this isn't my responsibility. And so I'm very concerned that we talk about ways to keep kids safe, but not create demons. And I've begun to see racism as largely this demon. And I feel like parents are telling their kids that this demon of racism and bad police and stuff lives underneath their bed and is going to constantly haunt them. And then it really gets in their head when the empirical data just doesn't support that the police are after anyone in any unique fashion. We are almost all of us are subject to the state coming down on us. As long as we're low class and middle class, we are very vulnerable to the state coming down on us. So this is nothing new. And I really feel like we end up creating the thing we're saying that we're against. And that fear I mean, if you're a young black kid growing up in the hood, we all know that your odds of being killed by another black male, your friend, is immeasurably higher than a cop killing you. We all know that even if you live in the most safe, urban, rural area, the odds of you dying in a car crash are immeasurably higher than a cop hurting you. So, like, I get that there is a demon element to this. Um, and it's based off of a real history, but is that history being reinforced as though it's present time? And
That it's um, there's like two different ways or two different measurements here that if you live in a particular area, yeah, okay, there's a reason to
mm,
be super concerned. Like if you're in a really poor area with a lot of crime,
right,
there's a reason to be super concerned. But if you don't, then it's not.
right. So we've talked about that before. Police respond to violence. So
Yeah,
if you're around violence, yeah, man, you are in a bad situation to get caught up. Not necessarily in the police killing you, but in the police locking you up and the police beating you up and getting a trumped up charge of, or even getting charged with something that almost everyone does, like jaywalking, that no one else would normally be charged with. So I think there is extreme institutional racism and problems when it comes to non-deadly force. But when the deadly force, it's just the data doesn't support it. Practical experience in my real life lived world doesn't, support this. Drug dealers carry weapons because of dudes that rob drug dealers, not because of cops. Even drug dealers are carrying a gun because of another 16 to 24-year-old that lives in their neighborhood. It has nothing to do with anybody else. So I've really wondered where we get that from. And I actually looked it up on Google Trends. I love to look up things on Google Trends because it shows you what people are really looking for. And if anyone out there doesn't know what Google Trends is, just go to Google Trends. It is probably your greatest resource about reality. Not what people say, what do they do? And I use it as a common one because people are like, "Oh, how is it that these ideas aren't being spread far and wide?" And I'm like, "Well, look on Google Trends and type in police reform, and you'll get about 70 responses per month at most." That's 70 people typing in police reform in Google in the entire world. No one's interested. You can look up any subject and you can see these spikes. So what I do is I really like to look at it to see where an idea comes in. So later on, we're going to talk about militarized police. You can type in militarized police and you're going to see a spike that correlates with a real life event that tells you when did this stuff start happening? When did people really start to notice that this occurred? So Google Trends is a great thing. And when I look up the talk, and I look up people responding to police violence, I see zero information. It's 20, maybe 30 hits per month, and if anything at all. Sometimes it has no data. So this is another thing where people aren't actually looking for solutions. They're looking for confirmation of their preconceived narrative. And I think Google Trends is the one that really shows you whether you're talking about something real or something that's a preconceived narrative or something that is just hits people's worldview and then it drops off. So I wonder if those things are really important. That's one of my frustrations about police reform. I think if you've been subject to police brutality or any kind of police harm, or if you've been a cop, you gotta know that there are all these problems. But is that just a bubble from those of us who have been victim and victimizer that really the rest of the world doesn't see and doesn't participate in, and they just go with the preconceived narrative because they're not searching? Like, I mean, there's been some people in Baltimore that had felt like they had trumped up charges put on them. And they've called me and they've sent me messages and they've talked about things. There's been parents of people who have been killed by police and they talk to me about police reform solutions. And it's only those type of people that really seem to be interested in the actual tangible things that can improve the next killing. That's what real justice has always been to me. So it's a little bit of a side track that I got off on here. That's common for me. But I feel like that way with like it is, I know, like Tamir Rice and things like that. I always say there's no level. Let's take something more recent. With Derek Chauvin being charged in Minneapolis with killing George Floyd. there's not going to be, and there hasn't been some kind of call to ensure that this situation never happens again. And that's the only kind of view I can see justice as. The police and society should be saying, what do we do, whether it makes sense or not, or whether it appeases us, what do we do to make sure this never happens again? And I can say that painting the police as the demon is not helping us not make sure these things don't making sure these things don't happen again. And I know that having a criminal case and putting Derek Chauvin in prison for as long as you could possibly get him into prison for does nothing to fix to make sure that the next George Floyd killing doesn't happen. And I think the data shows that you actually increase the chances that these things happen again. So
Okay,
how much are we in the bubble? Go ahead, sorry.
let me ask you this then. For people who would say that locking the officer up is a deterrent, why isn't it? Why do you say that that does not keep it from happening again?
Right. So first, I would say that there's been no statistical correlation to locking people up in policing. But even if we take a step back, violence as a deterrent doesn't work in any form of violence whatsoever. Even it always frustrates me that Vladimir Putin ended the death penalty in Russia, and he literally says, anybody can look this up, he says that it makes him feel better and he understands and he wants to kill criminals, but the data does not support it being a deterrence to any kind of violent activity. So he's been forced to just say, this doesn't work and we're not going to do it anymore. But we still have the death penalty here in America. And we do all these things where we act like, Russia's bad in some way. And I'm like, well, Russia isn't killing people thinking that it stops the killing of other people. More violence just always perpetuates more violence. And if you think this criminal justice system is unjust, just because when its outcomes fit your preconceived narrative doesn't suddenly make that system just. Um, I think in this view, there's like this burden on me to say that it's not, but I'm actually having the null position where somebody would have to make the case that these type of activities improve the situation, because there's just no evidence I've seen in any way, shape, or form that they do. And using violence as a deterrent fails there's no correlation between how many people the government kills and how much violence takes place among the citizenry. I mean, it's usually opposite correlation. So it's just not there for it to occur. Now, I think when you're talking with cops and like what we should do with our kids, we really should be teaching them the same things that you do to problem solve anyone. I mean, a cop is just another human being, and we seem to continually think that because someone became a police officer through a myriad of reasons and motivations, that somehow everything that's human about them has evaporated. And I just don't see it that way. I think if you treat an officer in a negative way and you treat a regular person in a negative way, they're both going to have bad outcomes that you may blame the other person for. But I mean, you're not going to stop them from being a dick. And what did you do to help yourself? Um, so,
One
yeah.
addition there, because you've brought it up in our last conversation. So I understand what you're saying, like you're talking to another human being. But as you have noted before, you're talking to a human being who is carrying weapons,
Right.
and their only method, or their primary method rather, to resolve conflict is the use of violence.
Mhm.
So with that in mind, I think that probably informs how some people feel when they have police interactions.
Yeah, I can't argue with that whatsoever. What I'm trying to say is me at 23, with a uniform on, was much less likely to do something in response to you than me without a uniform on. So did I didn't change. It wasn't the uniform. It's me. I'm the one that's violent. Are violent people drawn to policing? Yeah, of course. We've and for good reasons and bad reasons. Can they get away with violence? Of course. But also, in my shoes, it was you've already invested millions of dollars in training and controlling my violence. There is a place for, let's say, benevolent violence in this world. Now, I would call that aggression. But what else is somebody like me to do that benefits society? Sure, we can talk about these conversations now, but that was a long road. We're talking about 23-year-old me. We're not talking about 41-year-old me. So 41-year-old me isn't going to do anything, but 23-year-old me, I mean, if you were going to treat me like an asshole in public, you were going to get a violent response. If you were going to treat me like an asshole in a uniform, you would probably get a slightly less violent response. So I just don't think it's the cop. I think it's just people. Some people are violent and some people aren't necessarily as prone to it. And I get what everyone's saying, but even if and this is like one of my big caveats is not to shift blame on this. I am not shifting blame by any means. I think 100% this is all on the officer. The citizen has no responsibility to cater to these things in all reality. I'm the professional. I'm supposed to be able to adapt and deal with any situation. And I can hold myself up to that standard. But that would be a weird standard to like publicly talk about, to tell your kids, well, when you get pulled over by the police, fuck them. It's their job to be professional. That's not really going to work out. So what I suggest is what I spent a bunch of time working on for you, and particularly in results to the talk. A lot of people have asked me for a long time to make this video.
I've never asked this, so this
You
isn't.
didn't? But you spawned it on for me to do this. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'll play this video. It's actually like 14 minutes. So if you want to go do something real quick before you watch the video, I'm going to put it on. And I spent a shit ton of effort with no resources to make this for you.
I do want to point out that I am not trying to say that these procedures are what should be necessary to maximize your potential for survival, but we must acknowledge the concern and that driving is a privilege. You look up in that rear view and you see those flashing lights and realize the state is about to put you under some intense scrutiny and maybe take your freedom and liberty away. All right, don't panic. First thing, stay calm, cool, and collected.
Float hearts from the haystack. I get free hugs and a plate mask. I don't trust any else love to be more than a
First, you want to look for a safe place to go ahead and pull over. What would I define as a safe place? An area that's well lit and protects you and the officer from vehicles coming past. This is definitely a big concern with officers, and it should be. Many of them get hit by the cars while they're doing these car stops. So you want to try to find some way to look out for them. And if you're looking out for them, maybe they notice that, and that can go away. This pull off up here on the side of the road looks ideal for this time of day. So let's go ahead and pull over here. Continue and follow laws such as don't forget to hit that blinker and indicate that you're pulling over. From my perspective as the officer, I'm starting to observe you in the vehicle, and I'm looking for indicators that you're reaching for something or trying to hide something, or just kind of seeing your general response, and I'm making judgment calls based off of that. I'm calling out to the dispatcher and telling them that where I am and what I'm about to do, that I'm pulling over this white vehicle with heavy tinted windows. I'm going to take a guess at how many people are inside. It looks like there's only one person, but I can't really see. I'm having the dispatcher run the tag for me, or I'm giving that tag information to the dispatcher to keep for the records, and I'm running it on my mobile data terminal. Typically, it doesn't take very long for me to get information back on the registered owners of the vehicle, or whoever's registered to the tag. And that will also run the license of the registered owners. So I'll have pictures of the registered owners, and I will have a warrant check run automatically on the owners, and if this tag is being registered or reported stolen from somewhere. A lot of other details about the registered owners will be included, but I won't really be able to look at those details until after we've stopped. Often things like protective orders, traffic citations, warrants, any kind of law enforcement related issues, immigration things sometimes, terrorism associations, all kinds of things like that are included with these reports. When you come to a stop, do everything you can to ensure that there's a safe approach for the officer to come to the vehicle. You don't want to butt all the way up to the edge on an area, or something that is like a gravelly or sloped area, something that's wet, a puddle. I mean, make sure you're doing everything you can to make the distractions and discourtesies towards the officer at a very minimum. As an officer, when you come to this stop, what I am looking for is I want to see your reverse lights come on momentarily, and then I want to see your foot come off the brake. It's an automatic. As you cycle up, click, click, that reverse light will come on, and then we go into park. If it's a manual, yes, it's not going to go into reverse, but as you depress the clutch and you come to a stop, pull up the emergency brake and pull off of the regular brake. That way the car is secured and you're letting those brake lights come off. At nighttime, the officer is likely to use a spotlight beam on the car and shine it in your side view or your rear view mirror. This is to provide two things for the officer: to provide a tactical advantage by having you be somewhat blinded, and then to illuminate the interior of the vehicle. Turn off the radio. I can't tell you how many times somebody left the radio on when I'm trying to approach the vehicle, and I'm the first to admit that there was no way for this car stop to go well when that was how it started. Turn on your interior lights, even if it's in the middle of the day, especially if it's a heavily tinted vehicle like this one. Roll every window, sunroof. I don't care what it is. If it goes down, put it down. If you followed all of these things, about now, the officer is likely to believe that you are another cop or you're close to one in some way. I would say that the jury is out on whether to put on your flashers or not, your emergency flashers. Personally, the light blinking in my eyes would be annoying and I wouldn't want you to do it. But I suppose that's not everyone's belief. Plan ahead and keep your ID and your registration handy that you don't have to reach for it. Turn off the vehicle, take the ignition, your driver's license, and that registration, and place both hands out the window. If you did not plan this far ahead, do not reach for anything until instructed to do so. Because this whole time that you are going through these things, I am looking for the signs that you are reaching or hiding something. Your shoulder dipping, reaching across into the glove box, putting something into the back seat, things like that. If asked to get out of the vehicle, open the door from the outside like this. So far, you've already hit on two very important bonuses from these actions. First, thinking of the officer and their safety will go a long way in reducing any repercussions. And second, if you do all of this and something goes wrong, your family's lawsuit will go very smoothly. At least where I'm from, an experienced officer will keep that light shined in your eyes and in lighting up the interior of the car, and will approach from the passenger side of the vehicle. I can understand that if you have a very nice and well-kept and beautiful car, you may not like it, but the officer is likely to touch the vehicle in multiple places. The truth behind this isn't to be a dick and put fingerprints on your car. The purpose is that if something goes wrong and we are killed in this moment or assaulted, that our DNA and fingerprints will be on the vehicle. That's the reality for the officer conducting a car stop. The officer will look in the vehicle, and as you can see, by lowering all the windows, you obviously make this job much easier on the officer and further puts the officer at ease. I've had plenty of people be very startled once they hear the officer speak from the passenger side of the vehicle. Let's quickly look at what the officer is going to do when they stop. And if you can help make these things easier on the officer, again, you will go another step further in increasing the likelihood that this car stop ends in a way that's safe for everyone involved. An experienced officer will park the vehicle at an angle. Another stark reality for why the officer is doing this is because doors are not very good at stopping bullets, but engine blocks are. So the officer is placing the engine block of his vehicle between you and himself so that he has a place of cover and concealment in case he is engaged. The officer will then go back around his vehicle and approach from the right side. If you see the officer cross the beam of light, I'm going to say that this officer is inexperienced or lazy. Now let's see what this looks like at night, especially with these heavily tinted windows. Still slide everything into park as normal, and then reach up there, turn that dome light on, and illuminate the interior, making it as easy as you possibly can for the officer to see inside and ease his insecurities over the situation. You can see the difference from the outside as the window goes down. And this does make a big difference. A little harder to see on cameras. Cameras don't work as good as the human eye does. But see how much more I can see in the interior. And all of this being able to see is going to put me much more at ease as the officer that my life is not at risk in this situation. Now, this is America, and a large reason why cops are jumpy is the handgun saturation. So let's go over some things to do if armed. Discourage keeping a weapon on you while in a vehicle, But if you do, ensure to keep it completely concealed. Some places require informing the officer that you are armed. Many of us have already seen that this can backfire, like it did for Philando Castile. So I strongly suggest that you just don't bring any weapons with you in vehicles. If you choose to exercise that Second Amendment right, when in the vehicle, remove all weapons or things that look like weapons and place them somewhere in your vehicle, not where you may keep any documents or things that the officer may ask for. This glove box here, bad idea. On the seat, right here where the officer can see, bad idea. Right here, shoved between the seat, another place where the officer, especially approaching from the passenger side of the vehicle, will see a firearm readily accessible near your right hand. Bad idea. Here's a fine idea. Well, first move your purse and place it firmly underneath the passenger side seat. Another possibility, move your purse, place it on the seat along with a power cord. Then place up your mat and firmly place the weapon securely concealed. That's okay. Great job. Better yet, in one of the pouches where it's concealed and out of reach is another great option. Now this one here, place the trunk, conceal it in the trunk, and secure it. Now that's the best option. And here's a free bit of advice for you. When the cop approaches and he asks you, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" the only answer you should ever have is no. And look, I'm a hood cop. Maybe my perspective is limited. But I think if you follow these instructions, the odds of a car stop going wrong for you or the officer are extremely low. Personally, I don't take the position that this is your responsibility. I hold my peers and fellow officers for it to be our responsibility to have successful and safe car stops, regardless of what you do. But respect being a two-way street is going to have the best results. I am Michael Wood, and this was How to Survive a Car Stop.
And I'm glad you didn't get shot because that video, the way it starts, with the ominous, the angle of the, the person driving, from the cop's point of view, looks like you're about to get laid out in the street.
Well, I'm glad it all worked out too, considering my wife was driving. You never know; she could have been having a bad day with me.
Yeah, and you're driving around with a purse in your car, that's not,
Yeah.
you in there,
Yeah, something's already dodgy going on. So what did you think of that?
bad idea.
Right, bad idea. So I think ultimately that's about as far as I'm willing to go in making suggestions about what other people tell their kids. I'm trying to play both sides of that, obviously. And if you do something other than that, I don't know what your goal is. And that's really all I can say. I mean, I think the talk is necessary, but I got a real problem with creating demons. Even maybe if the demons are there. I mean, I don't think this demon is there, but if Martin Luther King came up saying, "Man, you guys are right. We're totally screwed. We'll never get past this. The white man is always going to keep us down, and we'll never get anywhere." I don't think he would have achieved what he achieved. And that's all I know, you know. What do you think?
I think it's a really, really good idea to be prepared. And I mean that for pretty much any situation in life that you can prepare for, you know, your regular day-to-day interactions. I think it's a good idea to be prepared for whatever, you know, to have a relaxed attitude and, you know, to pay attention to your surroundings and things like that. But I don't think it's a good idea to go around looking for trouble. So in that light, I essentially agree with what you're saying.
I agree with what I'm saying too, so I'm glad we're on the same same page with that. I mean, if there's anything to close it out with, it's just regardless of reality, when you're talking to your children, if your interest is in preserving their lives, I would say it's more important to provide them with tools that save their life versus tools that present reality to them. And I don't know if the psychologist is going to agree with that. All right, so let's head on over to traffic.